The world could be seeing a potential breakthrough in how the COVID-19 virus is being treated. An experimental antiviral pill developed by Merck Co. could be the first oral antiviral medication for COVID-19. For more on this, I'm joined by freelance health journalist Laura Gonzalez-Lopez. Ms. Gonzalez-Lopez, good to have you once again on the Daytime Update. So tell us about this pill and what it is supposed to do.
Right. So this pill works by sort of messing up the way that the virus makes copies of itself. So it stops the virus from replicating. Merck, as you know, trialed this vaccine in about 800 people, many of whom were in South Africa. When people took this medicine who had mild to moderate COVID-19, they took this medicine every 12 hours for about 5 days. It halved the risk of hospitalization, and it also seemed to do something to the risk of death. So there was no deaths in the group of participants who got the drug rather. I will say that what we know about how this pill works is really based on a press release by Merck. We have yet to see peer-reviewed data, which means we have yet to see what other independent scientists think of how the trial was conducted and the research. But what we do know is that the results of the trial were so impressive that independent scientists who were monitoring it said, you know, listen, you've done enough to prove what the trial set out to do. You can go ahead and stop it early. The U.S. drug regulator, the Food and Drug Administration, also agreed. So Merck has said right now that they're going to approach the U.S. regulator for immediate approval or emergency approval of this drug and are going to do so in other countries around the world.
You mentioned there that those who are observing this drug have said it's working so well, let's just move ahead. But in my understanding of perhaps what should be looked into as to whether or not a drug is effective is not only how it works, but also the possible side effects of that drug being administered. Has that aspect also been looked into?
Right. So these independent experts that I've spoken about are called a data safety monitoring board. So they're looking at everything from outcomes, how well that drug is working, and they can see all this data while some of the scientists involved in the trial can't. So they're sort of a safety mechanism. So they're looking at how well it's working, but they're also looking at all that safety data. So what this data safety monitoring board said was, listen, you guys have shown that it's been safe. There were no real side effects reported. You've met these sort of, in science terms, the endpoints of the trial. You've proven what you set out to prove. You can go ahead and stop the trial early. So safety was definitely taken into consideration. And again, all that safety data, all that efficacy data gets turned over to national regulators around the world that Merck will seek out approval from.
So what does this mean, and what would it mean moving forward for the intravenous administration of vaccination?
So this is definitely not going to replace vaccines, is what most experts are saying right now. What is really remarkable about this is that, it sort of proves a kind of a concept. Scientists weren't sure if an antiviral pill like this would work to help COVID-19 patients if it was given to them early. So what you're probably going to see, and Stat News is reporting this, is you're probably going to see similar medications come out from a similar drug is supposed to come out by the end of the year from Roche. We have a different kind of drug sort of doing the same thing expected to come out from Pfizer that might be used in conjunction with this Merck drug. But also it's kind of opened up a new possible pathway for COVID-19 treatment. Right now, the World Health Organization has approved a handful of treatments. Most of them are very complicated drugs to administer, and more importantly, they're super expensive. So for instance, when South African experts looked to see if we could use those treatments here in South Africa, they said, listen, these drugs, WHO estimates that they cost about 30,000 Rand per course. We can't afford to use them in South Africa. So the Merck pill could be easier to use, it could be easier to roll out, but the real question here is how much it's going to cost. And right now, that's looking pretty expensive. So what we know is some back-of-the-envelope calculations based on what the U.S. is paying for it, because the U.S. has ordered a lot of this drug already. They're paying about $11,000 per patient for this drug. It only costs about 300 Rand to make. Merck has said it's open and it has pursued voluntary licenses with 8 big generic manufacturers, 2 of whom we already get antiretrovirals from here in South Africa. And those companies could provide poorer countries with cheaper versions, perhaps, of this drug. But really, a lot is unknown about how much this drug will actually cost countries.
Laura Gonzalez-Lopez, thank you very much for that update. Certainly exciting news as far as the fight against COVID-19 is concerned. But as you are saying, this is very much still a work in progress. Cost issues, etc., still need to be factored in there. But thank you very much for that update.